All right, Brother Mike, would you open us up in word of prayer, please?
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege to be here. We ask now that you would bless the service today with the presence of power. Thank you for the people that's here. I do ask that you bless Brother Grant. You'd help him as he's prayed and studied and prepared. You'd help him have good liberty to teach today. Pray you open our hearts to what you have for us. I pray you bless each teacher and each student. Pray you bless the pastor while he's away, and Sister Patsy, you watch over, take care of, give them traveling grace, bless their health, send them back safely. Help Brother Kelly, who's having some lung problems this morning. Pray you bless him and others that need it. Pray you watch over, take care of them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so we're in Proverbs, chapter 15, chapter 14. We finished up last week. I think I just wanted to make one little comment on something on the end of chapter 14. Let's see. In verse 34, it says, "Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people." And I would like to just point out that one of the reasons that we have this, great civilization or whatever today, where we have mostly democratic, the people have a say in the government, they have relatively free society, they're prosperous, even the poor people in America still have the stuff that I consider essential, which is internet access, electricity. Notice I put internet access first. But if you look at other societies, look around the world and the advancement of societies, they're Western. We use the term Western. But even if you take a country like Japan honestly has a Western civilization, and that's because we imposed it on them after World War II. What? Yeah. So why is this society so blessed? Why is the Western society so blessed? It's because of God. It's because of our Judeo-Christian values. It's because of Jesus. It's because the spread of Christendom. The only other significant civilization before that you would say actually was civilized was the Roman civilization, which is obviously no longer here anymore. But we have a lot to be thankful for. One of the things we should, if you're young, it's easy to be like, there's so much indoctrination about how America's bad, or, the term colonizer I've seen that word more in the past 12 months than I have in my previous 46 years. Colonizing wasn't a bad thing, but it's turned into a dirty word. But the fact of the matter is colonizing has honestly made most things more prosperous. And America was colonized. We had the colonies, right? In fact, the British people who want to be snarky still call us the colonies, as if they didn't have any other colonies. The reason they said the sun never sets on the British Empire is because the British Empire stretched around the world. So there was always sun on the British Empire, no matter where you were. There was something that was part of the Empire of Britain. So I wouldn't say I'm a student of history, but I enjoy history. My dad taught history. He had a master's degree in history. And I've learned more recently. I've listened to some podcasts and stuff. And the fact of the matter is if a religion is not a Judeo-Christian religion, it's almost always a bloody one. They do human sacrifice, almost without exception. The sacrifices that God did in the Bible, which sometimes seem kind of bloody, those are animal sacrifices. And as we know, animals are different from people. Although some would say they're better than people, but they're not. An animal is just an animal. It doesn't know good from evil. It just gets taught. It learns right and wrong. It doesn't even really know. Its version of right and wrong is what gets him into trouble, what gets him a treat. It's just a carrot and a stick, and that's all there is to it. There is no moral compass for an animal. That doesn't mean an animal can't have a personality or emotions or get frustrated. We had our dog. Our dog loves to play fetch, and my wife lets us play fetch in the house. She's a very nice wife. Anyway, so it's funny to watch the dog chase after the ball and slide into stuff, sometimes knocking things over, but he's a lot of fun. But I was holding the ball and I was talking to her, and apparently I was taking too long because he started growling, but you could tell he was just frustrated. He was frustrated that I wouldn't throw the ball. He's ready to go get the ball, and I'm taking too long. So animals have emotions. I'm not saying they don't. They don't. You can like animals. It's fine. Just keep animals in their proper place, and we're good. People really tend to elevate animals greater than people because they see the wicked that people do. They see the evil that people do. And what they don't realize is that evil is without God. That's never God's will. And that evil is allowed because if God doesn't allow us to have the freedom to do bad things, then, well, we don't really have our own free will. We don't let our kids have free will. Now, as they get older, they get more freedom, kind of by necessity, because you'll go crazy if you keep them locked down forever, but some parents do that. And then almost inevitably, I'm not going to say it always happens, but inevitably, when the child receives freedom, especially if they haven't been taught maybe properly, but then they end up going wild because they've just been locked down. So I just wanted to emphasize that our society and the blessings that we have all around the world are because of Jesus and what he's done. I find it humorous when I see people who are so supportive of the Muslim culture because it doesn't logically make sense. I mean, the Muslim culture, the people that are supportive of the Muslim culture are the people who are supportive of all the leftist things in our society, and from transgender, mutilation to homosexuality and those varieties and other stuff. They support the same stuff, but if they go over there, they would be persecuted, probably killed. Israel is actually, Israel is a democracy. It's got its flaws, for sure. But Israel is a very liberal society and lets a lot of people have a lot of freedom. And when you have a lot of freedom, you will inevitably have a lot of wickedness too. But those people over in America or around the world that are supportive of Hamas are far more welcome. In fact, no, they are welcome in Israel, but they're not welcome if you go to the Gaza Strip. Or if you go to the West Bank, they call it the West Bank because it's the West Bank of Jordan, which is actually Judea and Samaria in Israel, which I thought was interesting. I just learned that not too long ago. But we have a lot to be thankful for. But let's go on to chapter 15. And we'll just kind of go through these. I've grouped some of them. I don't know that the grouping is necessarily correct or not. One of the great things about Proverbs is you can take almost any verse. Yes, Bill?
I got a question about the internet thing.
Okay.
Does China allow internet access?
Yes, they do, but they have this thing called the Great Firewall of China that restricts what people can actually see. So a corollary to that comment, this is not really related to the lesson, is what I have really noticed doing is governments put out, not just, I mean, it's mostly governments that have put out tons of misinformation, disinformation, whether it's the news media or something else. And it has become so, and I've said this before, you cannot know what is true or not. Somebody says somebody died. Okay, well, you need to wait for that to be confirmed from multiple other sources. Even if it's a supposedly reputable source, I don't believe it. You have to make that effort, but after you get burned a few times of believing things, you will start to do that. But the governments, I mean, if you don't know what to believe, then you kind of can't, it's hard to fight back against the disinformation. So, verse 1, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. So this is a good one. A soft answer turneth away wrath. And we can try to do this, and I do. But as my wife pointed out the other day, it's just really hard to have a soft answer with our children, especially when they come at you with such blatant disrespect and just pettiness. It's kind of a righteous anger that you have, but it manifests itself in a fleshly way. So I think it's right to be angry about that. But inevitably, we're like, how dare you talk to me like that? And then you yell at them, or I yell at them at least. Maybe you don't. But, I'm bigger. I threaten them, my boys. I'm like, hey, you might be able to bench more, but I can fall on you and, not take you out of the game. I mean, you're not going to, that's all I have to do. So it's true, but I would like to point out that you need to answer, okay? You need to answer softly. Staying silent does not turn away wrath. Staying silent can make it worse. Now, that we have the axiom or the worldly proverb of if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And that's good advice, but you can't always just stay silent about things. And if, somebody's upset about something, you have to respond. If a customer comes to you and they're mad about something and they're yelling at you, and then they stop and they're waiting for you to respond, you can't just be silent. I've had an interaction with somebody where I wasn't even mad, but I got mad. I was getting pretty irritated before we were done because the person wasn't responding. Like, I would say things. They would not reply. And after a little bit, I was really getting irritated because she was just ignoring me. And I'm like, and then she'd tell me to do things, and this was a technical support issue, and I'm like, I don't trust you. Like, I'm bringing up concerns, you're literally ignoring me. So the point here is that we need to answer whatever it is. We need to answer softly. It is possible to be soft, yet still have, I believe, righteous anger. In fact, I think that's really most of the time when righteous anger, the way it should be used. It should be used softly. If you can't say something with getting all mad and yelling, that means you're not controlling your temper. So it's not righteous if you're not controlling yourself. And what's the side effect of not controlling ourselves? But grievous words stir up anger. So if my son says something to me that's disrespectful, which happens regularly, but it usually happens towards my wife in her direction, because I'm bigger than him, The proper response is to answer softly, even though we're irritated. And if we don't, well, guess what? We make things a lot worse. So I will do the whole alpha male thing with him and be like, you're going to treat your mother that way? Okay, go to your room. And he'll be like, he's mad, right? He's got his pride is puffed up, and this is a problem. And then, well, I can't back down to my 14-year-old son. So then we just keep one-upping each other, and he gives me lip, and then I'm like, okay, now you can't play for till tomorrow. And then I get more lip, and he tells me he doesn't care, and blah, blah, blah. And it just keeps escalating until, something bad could happen, and it's seemed very close at times. Now, we're both working on that. But the point is grievous words stir up anger. So if somebody's mad and you're mad, we have to consciously extend the effort. And I say this to Christians, especially when they're driving, and I struggle with this too. But I tell you what, if I know one place where I see Christians does not control themselves, it's when they're driving. The road rage, the anger that I see, the entitlement that I see is pretty awesome. Not awesome in a good way. Kind of awe-inspiring that you're like, oh, you're a Christian? Wow, you sure don't drive like one. That being said, the left lane is the passing lane. It's not the fast lane, okay? And I can show you a video from a Texas state trooper who pulled over a gentleman because he was just going the speed limit in the left lane, okay? So just want to make that clear. The tongue of the wise uses knowledge aright. So what does aright mean? Well, on this one, you're probably going to guess they use it right, which is right. They use it well. They use their knowledge well. They don't use it for evil. They use it to add value, to edify, to teach, really. That's what a lot of teaching is about. If you know something and you feel like it has value and you feel like the people will at least be somewhat receptive, I think it behooves us to tell people that. I want to tell people about Jesus most of the time if they want to hear it. Now, I do struggle. I don't like preaching to people who do not want to be preached to. I don't know that it has a lot of merit in it anyway. But if somebody's willing to listen, I will tell them the facts. I will tell them about the gospel. I remember explaining to somebody where 3 heavens came from. There are 3 heavens, by the way. Okay, and you're like, what? This sounds sacrilegious. Well, once again, words have different meanings. Just like baptism, there's different baptisms. Baptism just means immerse. And a heaven is the heavens. Okay, so we have 3 heavens. One is the sky, one is space, and the third heaven is where all the fun stuff is. That's where the mansions are. Mormons confuse that. They believe that there are 3 heavens and no hells. I'm not sure where they don't get the hells, but they think that there's a heaven for bad people, so everybody goes to heaven. So Hitler's in the first heaven. People like me would go to the second heaven because, I'm at least a mostly moral person and believe in God, but I'm not a Mormon. And then the Mormons get the third heaven. And then the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. You know that. And as I said last week, fools are always talking. If they talk, they're telling you stuff that they know very factually. They're never wrong. If you correct them and you show them how they're wrong, they will not admit it. I'm almost never dogmatic about stuff. I will be dogmatic about the gospel and things like that. If somebody says there's more than one way to heaven, I'll argue over that one. I'm not going to get in a big argument, but I will say, no, that's wrong. Okay, so that's what I mean by being dogmatic. But if you want to argue about the color of the sky, I'm not going to argue about that because the sky may be blue, but then at certain times, the sky might be a different color based on forest fires or something else, or who knows, maybe you're colorblind and you don't see the sky as blue. So, I'm not going to be dogmatic. If somebody wants to be, if they're like, no, it's green. Your brother is colorblind, right? He thought deer were green for the longest time. So, and Forrest is colorblind too. I don't think he's as bad, but so it's funny to argue with him over colors. Be like, go get the brown bag. He's like, I don't know which one's brown. Verse 3, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. This is something that is always good to remember, and everybody here knows this. I don't have to spend a lot of time on it. But the fact that God always sees everything we do means you better be close to God. And that's why I said last week, we need to, when we realize we sin, we should repent immediately. We should confess it. At the very least, that's why like devotions is so important. You got to face God and get with God. And my wife was wondering why some people struggle to go to church. And it's because, you know what? It's pretty hard to not face God at church. And if you face God, he's going to put his finger on things in your life that you're struggling with, that you're not doing right. And that doesn't feel good. Coming to church, I know for us Christians that do it as a routine, it can get routine. It can be like whatever, or maybe, I'm not saying people like that here do, but I mean, if you have this routine, it's easy to get into a rut. But if you're not doing that and you go to the house of God, it's going to impact you a lot more. We have to constantly work to make sure that we're treating God with reverence and awe and fear. That takes some effort because it's almost familiarity breeds contempt a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that's the right case, but it's a little bit of you're with God all the time. You're always getting preached at. So there is a familiarity with God. But yeah, so God sees everything. We need to, coming to church has value because even if you're not paying attention in church, you still have this muscle memory of going to church. And if you're going to get convicted, it's probably because God's eventually going to punch through that wall of fog that you have built up and you're going to hear something. But if you're not going to church, it's going to be harder to get that reconciliation. And then God's not going to bless you if you're not walking with him. I mean, I don't bless my son with gifts and verbal praise and things like that if he's defying me. It's just common sense. It doesn't mean I don't love him. It doesn't mean I'm not going to provide for him or help him still. But he's not going to be blessed, or at least not nearly as much, if there's a problem with the relationship. Verse 4, a wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. The interesting thing is the word wholesome here. So wholesome actually means healing here. And I wouldn't normally have looked up the definition of that word because I think wholesome is pretty self-explanatory. But I use Ironside as a commentary, and I bought it digitally. And annoyingly enough, all the verses in there are, I think, NIV. And so that trips me up sometimes because a lot of times it still means basically the same, but they change words and they use the word healing. So I thought that was interesting, but really, what is a healing tongue? I mean, it's the same thing as a wholesome tongue. Wholesome is not wrong here. What is a wholesome tongue? Well, a wholesome tongue is a tongue that is producing value. It is not a tongue that's telling dirty jokes. It is not a tongue that is tearing down their brothers and sisters or husband and wife. It's not a son that's criticizing. It's not or it's not a tongue that is criticizing, sorry. It's a tongue that if you have something to say, it builds you up. If you're discouraged, then you encourage the person by saying, I know it's hard, or whatever it is. One thing that somebody said once to my dad when his grandma or his mom died was, you'll smile again. And he thought that was a really interesting thing. It's not wrong to say I'm sorry or, whatever. But the important thing to remember whenever you're going through a rough time is that you'll get through it. God will help you. He's promised that. Now, it's easier if you can trust in Him to help you or to even take care of the problem itself. I have problems at work. Sometimes, it seems like on a daily basis. The job is very frustrating to me because I have to, pray so much. It's like, what on earth? You're telling me that you want this now? I'll just give you the example. I had Wednesday, go to work. This is like a holiday week. Most people are taking time off. Stuff's going on, I know that, but nothing major that I know of. And then they say, I realize 8 o'clock, 10 after 8, I realize I have a meeting that I'm missing. So I get on it and, why is there an 8 o'clock meeting? Because something needs to be done today, this Sunday. Actually, not that day, not Wednesday when the meeting was. And it didn't seem like it was going to get done. So he was having a meeting with us to try to figure out where it was. And we're like, we know you were asking for this one thing, and we gave the person who was working on it this information, but, and I'm sitting here like, okay, this has 3 work days. I wanted to take Thursday and Friday off. How can I fix this? And I want to be the kind of person that doesn't just make excuses and say, well, sorry, we can't do this in 3 days. You can't even give us exactly what you want. But I realized, not that day, I think I realized it more recently when I was studying, but there's some things I can't fix. God has to do it. That's something, I don't know what the answer was. I asked my boss for Thursday and Friday off anyway, because I told her I can't do anything. But if you need me to, call me. If you'll give me the time off. And she gave me the time off, and I haven't been called yet, and Lord willing, I won't. But I realized I can't fix this. God has to take care of it. I don't have any idea what the solution is. I don't know if I need to play a part and do some clicky things or typey things. I don't know. I still don't know. But I have to give it to God and trust that He will take care of it, or enlighten me on how I can take care of it. And to be quite honest, that's kind of the way with my children, especially my daughters right now, who both have guys interested in them, and they're guys that are unsaved. But we've made very clear to them that people have to be saved. So I said, you can invite them to church. If they don't want to come to church, they're not very interested in you. And they were like, yeah, that makes sense. Well, they called our bluff, and now they're coming to church some. So, I don't know what to do. I can't say, don't come to church, right? Because I care about their souls. But I'm nervous because I don't want our daughters, one of them, I won't say who, can get attached to somebody on the internet after 15 minutes of talking to them, which is why we don't let them do that. Okay, and there will be tears when they're told that they can't do that anymore. This is my friend. So I have no idea. I'm trusting God that He knows what He's doing. And I know that. And sometimes when bad things happen, and you're doing your best, we can question ourselves and like, should we not have done this? It's like, well, were you trusting God? And it's like, well, yes. It's like, well, sometimes God uses these bad things to help people grow and to, grow in their faith. They grow through trials. So I don't know, but I do know that God knows, and I can't fix everything, so I have to rest and let him do it. So a wholesome tongue, boy, a lot just on one word there. So a wholesome tongue is a tree of life. That's just your analogy for something that's uplifting, healing, something that's growing. But perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. You can always tell when there's a break. That's basically a breach. A breach is a penetration. It would be a wound, or you drop a glass. A breach would be the crack, or what if you're broken too. So breach is a bad thing, right? And we don't want breaches in our spirit. My dad always told me, there's your home life, there's your work life, there's your spiritual life, and if any one of them are messed up, you're going to be messed up. You're going to be struggling, right? So we always have to work to make sure that we don't have breaches. If you're a husband and you say something stupid, and why do I pick on the husbands? Because I'm a husband, and I know that I say a lot more stupid things than my wife. Who probably has never said anything stupid. Then I need to get that fixed as fast as possible. And some women take a while to get over those things. And that's tough for guys, because we usually flare up and then it's kind of over with. But we flare up, right? It's tends to be way too much for most women, who are now they're burned and they need time to recover. Well, faster you can recover, the better, because you're healing if your husband is actually repentant and sorry, then it doesn't do you any good to be upset any longer than necessary. So, but that's where prayer comes in, right? We, as husbands, when I screw up, I realize it pretty quick, and I apologize and then give my wife space to, try to, for her to get, her heart right. No, for her to, recover emotionally, and God can help with that. I know women that will be mad for days or weeks. Thankfully I don't have to go through that, but my mom could be mad for a long time. Although sometimes I think maybe it's because she didn't think my dad cared much. I don't know, or didn't notice. I'm not sure, but she would be mad for a long time. So whenever you have a breach, whether it's in your own relationship, if it's a problem at work, or it's a problem with God, you need to get those fixed as soon as possible. And sometimes, I've had instances which for some reason, I could give you details, but I've had bosses change, and then I was kind of a quiet under the radar worker, doing stuff, not seeking a lot of guidance, and I didn't work on my relationships with my bosses as much. It just never really occurred to me, and so then my boss would think I wasn't necessarily a valued employee, and so then I would have to take the time to show them that I was, a good employee. And it didn't change much for me. But I realized a perception, and so I had to work towards improving that. And so some things can take time. But most things you can solve fairly quickly if you just have the right spirit, if you submit your pride, if you pray to God. And I've had times where somebody's been unjust to me and I'm mad about it, and then I realize that by being mad, I'm being sinful, and that's wrong. A fool despises his father's instructions, but he that regardeth reproof is prudent. Well, we've talked about obeying your dad, obeying your father. That goes for us as Christians. God is our Father, and we need to obey him. The interesting thing here is he that regardeth reproof is prudent. And prudent is kind of a synonym for wisdom. You're gonna make mistakes. You shouldn't make a mistake and then go, yeah, everybody makes mistakes. That's not your place. But you do need to realize you can't be perfect either. There are some people who are like, I can't believe I made a mistake, and beat themselves up. That's not usually the problem in our society. It's usually, everybody makes mistakes. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean you keep making them. I want my children to learn from their mistakes. And I've used the term profit from your mistakes. You don't just learn, you actually gain something out of this. There's value in this mistake, okay? And that information, that knowledge, that wisdom that you've gleaned from making that mistake, whatever that mistake is, you can apply towards being a better person, a better husband, a better employee, a better son. In the house of the righteous is much treasure, but in the revenues of the wicked is trouble. So in the house of the righteous, that's not the literal house, but in our families or whatever. It's in my house is encompassing my entire life, really. Much treasure, once again, this is not literal money. It's possible, but it's unlikely. And it's unlikely largely because we have the prayer to have enough money in the New Testament. I don't remember if it was Paul, but basically to be content with what you have and get enough so that you don't need to steal to feed yourself, but not so much that you rely on the riches to take care of you. You can do that because money can solve a lot of problems. It certainly cannot solve them all, though. And so even if you're rich, you would still need to rest in God because he cannot fix problems with your relationships. Money can't do that. Money sometimes can band-aid problems in relationships, but it can't actually repair them. If you take your wife on a nice 2-week cruise of the Caribbean or something, you might feel closer to her, but spending time with her and her feeling loved and everything, but then if you go back and you treat her the same way you did before, well, you're going to undo all that. And so money helps, but it doesn't fix everything. So we need enough money, but we need to depend on God as well. Revenues of the wicked is trouble. You reap what you sow. Verse 7, the lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the foolish doeth not so. So this is similar to where I was talking about the wholesome tongue as a tree of life. And I said, you'll tell anybody who will listen to you this stuff. I am constantly telling my daughters stuff because they listen to me. Did my sons listen to me? Yeah, but in different ways. The daughters seem actually interested about whatever, or at least they fake it. They fake it pretty well. But no, I explain to them different things. I'll explain to them history, but I'll explain to them lots of things about women and men and stuff and things that, some of the dangers that they have to watch out for as women and how, worry isn't the right term, but my boys, I'm concerned on raising them up so that they can become men, which means one of the major things of being a man is protecting women, which might sound a little weird, but you have to protect your girlfriend, your wife, your whatever, your mom, your sisters, your daughters. That's one of our roles. I know there's more than one. Boy, I'm talking. During some of the school shootings, there's multiple instances of where guys shielded girls from bullets, and the girls survived, and the guys didn't. You don't hear a lot about that. But that is one of our things. So, but with our daughters, it's a little different. I can't be there all the time. I need them to keep their eyes open. I need them to see threats. I don't want them to be afraid of everything and just hang out in the house, because they like doing that a lot right now. I need them to go outside as well. But I want them to be safe at the same time. And there's a balance. And so I'm trying to teach my daughters what I can about the ways of the world and, the dangers, things they should do, the kind of guy maybe that they would want. I tell them statistics about marriage. Guess what? Arranged marriages are more successful than the regular kind that we do in America. Make sure that they know that love is a choice. It's not a feeling. Because, I won't say anything more about my marriage. Let's just say my wife has to choose a lot. There's fewer feelings there, I think. Because I'm so annoying. I mean, I'm on my best behavior when I'm here, right? Or almost my best. I figure it's my church family, so I can be more myself, and that's why I'm probably not quite as friendly as I should be. But yeah. So the last thing I want to say there is, we disperse knowledge. I was thinking about this as dispense. That just means putting it out. But actually disperse is, you're going all over the place. I would love being a teacher if you've actually got knowledge to share with people. But there's no point in being a teacher in today's society when nobody will listen to you. My dad was a teacher, previous generation or two, and he was treated horribly in a small town in rural Idaho. So I really feel for teachers now. The heart of the foolish doeth not so. The foolish don't dispense knowledge, they dispense attitude and arrogance, and they're selfish. That's what this is about. I don't tell people things because I want to feel good about myself, because I'm puffed up and I want to show you guys how smart I am, because I don't consider myself that smart. Why do I not consider myself that smart? I went to college. I did computer science and I was average, okay? And then the last company I was at, you know what? I definitely wasn't the smartest guy there either. I was probably about average there. There were people way brighter than me. You look at Kelly. Kelly would take calculus tests at West Point and he'd be done in 30 minutes for like a 90-minute test. And, it was just easy for him. Okay, so I don't ever look at myself as a smart person that has knowledge to impart to unwashed masses. I just have knowledge that I've learned for myself personally that I think is really helpful. And it's so easy to forget this stuff. It's so easy. Because I forget and I forget and I relearn and I relearn and I forget. And every time I relearn it, I hang on to it a little bit longer. And so I would encourage you to read a book in Proverbs, chapter in Proverbs, every day if you're not, whether you do it at night or do it in the morning, do what works for you. But then pick a verse out. So you're not just reading it. Pick a verse out, circle it in pencil or whatever, that kind of speaks to you. And then if you remember, meditate on that verse throughout the day. I usually am my brain is so full throughout the day, I don't have a lot of free time in my brain that I think back on it. But I do think it's interesting, the verses that I pick, and when I read through Proverbs again the next month, I notice again and what's speaking to me. And it just gives you just an extra little thing. My son Forrest said he doesn't, he would rather read something else rather than Proverbs, but I've been doing Proverbs only faithfully for the past few years, and I have found it's made a big difference in my life. So, on that, we'll end. I'll dismiss us in prayer. Oh Lord, we thank you so much for loving us and taking care of us, for blessing us, for saving our souls. Thank you for the people who are here today. And just